This video is sponsored by Squarespace. I'm proud to say that I'm a dude who has a website. I do a lot of things like YouTube and acting, and thanks to Squarespace, I'm able to have my online resume, if you will, in a one-stop shop, easy-to-share website of my own that covers everything I'm into. And their service is especially nice if you're a gaming creator, because you can do a lot of things that help expand your connection and interactions with your community, like using the member areas feature to reward your most dedicated fans with access to unique gated content or videos. It's also super easy to make a website that includes a whole bunch of links to different pages because of Squarespace's handy-dandy templates, each of which can be selected and built off of indefinitely. And of course, you can remain on top of your click traffic with the insightful analytics that will help you improve everything from keywords and SEO to tracking your most popular content. So if you have a community, want to build a community, or are in need of a website for any reason, go to squarespace.com and create your site with a free trial, and once it's all good and finished, head on over to squarespace.com/bandit for 10% off your first purchase. You won't regret it. And now, on to the video. At this point, I've repeated the name Tears of the Kingdom to myself so many times that I no longer know what reality is outside of the game. What is outside? What are friends? Well, who needs that stuff anyway? But before I pull a Zelda and fall hopelessly into the abyss that is my own insanity, here's the complete breakdown of the events of the universe of The Legend of Zelda, from its beginning all the way to Tears of the Kingdom. So if it's been a while since you've played Zelda or Breath of the Wild, you know, having released 6 years ago and all, or if you've never played Breath of the Wild, but yet you want to get Tears of the Kingdom, this video is for you. Oh, and spoiler alert, obviously. In the beginning, the goddesses created the heaven and the earth. Amen. These three goddesses are collectively referred to as the Golden Goddesses, Din, Furore, and Nehru. After they created the world, they departed for the heavens, and at the point where they left the world, an omnipotent three-pieced triangular relic was left behind that embodied the power of the gods. This relic is known as the Triforce, and its unlimited power would serve as the catalyst for pretty much every major conflict that was yet to come to the world. And trust me, there have been a lot. Because the power of the Triforce could easily be misused by the wrong person, the Golden Goddesses assigned the task of protecting the Triforce and the world of Hyrule to the fourth goddess named Hylia. Now, we've never gotten confirmation on how Hylia relates to the other goddesses specifically, or if she's also a Golden Goddess herself, or if they created her or something, but for theories on that subject, check out some of my videos like the Twins Secret or my collaboration with Zeltic on who this mysterious figure is. Either way, Hylia was soon met with a foe of her equal, the original king of the demons named Demise, or more specifically, the Bringer of Demise. Demise and his demonic armies created the first war against Hylia and her armies of the light over the Triforce, which led Hylia to send her people, known as the Hylians, skyward on chunks of rocks later to be known as Skyloft for their own protection. Meanwhile, Hylia created a weapon capable of harnessing the power of the light in order to strike down evil in any form, and this weapon was known as the Goddess Sword, which would later be forged into the Master Sword and still retains its power of harnessing beams of light energy to this day. Hylia, armed with her sword and joined by the forces of Hyruleans, then successfully sealed Demise within an imprisoned form underneath a part of her temple that she had sent skyward alongside the Hylians. Eventually, Hylia decided to become a member of her beloved race of Hylians herself, and upon sacrificing her goddess form, reincarnated as the girl known as Zelda, who lived in Skyloft. Eventually, Demise's right-hand demon known as Girahim, also known as Demise's own Master Sword, kicked off events that would lead to Demise's eventual breaking of his seal, starting with unleashing a tornado that would knock Zelda down to the surface, far beneath Skyloft. However, at some point before her sacrifice, the goddess Hylia had managed to place the goddess sword inside her statue, which had risen alongside Skyloft. And because of this, Fi, the spirit inside the goddess sword and Girahim's opposite, was able to contact a determined young man with the potential to save the world. This hero was known as Link, and was Zelda's childhood friend. Together, Link and Fi were able to not only forge the Blade of Evil's Bane, but use it to ultimately defeat Demise and seal his essence within the blade, saving Zelda and the rest of the Hylians above and Hyruleans below. Well, for now at least, because before Demise had faded into the sword, he revealed that he had placed a curse upon Zelda's bloodline and Link's spirit of the hero, a curse which would bind the fates of their descendants together for all eternity, a curse which permeates still to this day. Now fast forward centuries, perhaps even millennia later. The Hylians, led by the descendants of the original Zelda who remained on the surface following the defeat of Demise, known as the royal family of Hyrule, have long since established the Kingdom of Hyrule, and just like their ancestor the goddess Hylia, are the protectors of the Triforce, which rests within an alternate realm called the Sacred Realm, the door to which lies in the Temple of Time within Hyrule Castle Town. Over the years, conflicts have occurred time and time again over the relic, the most recent of which was a civil war. This war was fierce and very bloody, cruelty, and even some women and children fell victim to the violence of battle. One woman in particular, whose husband was likely a soldier in the war, became fearful for her child's life and fled into a forbidden forest in order to find a place where her baby would be safe. Unfortunately, the woman died of her wounds shortly after arriving in Kokiri Forest, but the heroic woman's actions in saving her child and entrusting him to the great Deku Tree for protection would echo throughout the rest of time, because her son would grow up to become the legendary hero of time. About 10 years later, the boy known as Link, who grew up alongside the childlike forest spirits of the Kokiri, would find out that the Deku Tree had been cursed by an evil man. Link would attempt to enter and save the life of the guardian, but it would be too late. Before passing away, however, the Deku Tree tasked Link with leaving the forest for the first time and seeking out the Princess of Hyrule, a girl known as Zelda, which Link does. After sneaking into Zelda's courtyard within the castle, the two share a fateful meeting, and Zelda explains to Link that she's been having dreams of darkness approaching the land, but that a boy clad in green would appear to save them. She also reveals that at that very moment, inside the throne room, the king of the neighboring Gerudo tribe was swearing allegiance to Hyrule's king, but that Zelda didn't trust him because she saw evil in his eyes, and correctly believed that he was actually after the Triforce. This man was called Ganondorf. Being a member of the royal family, Zelda knew of the legendary relics kept within their care, such as the Triforce and the Ocarina of Time, the latter of which was necessary to open the door to the Sacred Realm and therefore the Triforce. She then concocts a plan to do just that in order to obtain the Triforce before Ganondorf can get his hands on it, and tasks Link with aiding her in this quest. However, eventually Ganondorf learns of these requirements and decides to storm the castle in search of Zelda and the Ocarina. Link arrives just in time to witness Zelda and Impa fleeing on horseback, just as Zelda throws the Ocarina to Link in order to finish what she started. After a close brush with Ganondorf himself, Link escapes and obtains the Ocarina from the moat and enters the Temple of Time. He then opens the door of time, but one step remains. The final key to the Sacred Realm was none other than the legendary Master Sword itself. So naturally, Link draws it from its pedestal, but had no idea that doing so would not only open the way to the Sacred Realm, but would also render him unconscious for 7 years, until he grew to an age worthy of wielding the Master Sword. This left the Sacred Realm and therefore the Triforce wide open for Ganondorf to approach, which he did, laughing all the while. However, hope still remained because the Triforce sensed the unbalanced heart of Ganondorf and upon his touch split into its 3 separate pieces, each of which rested within an individual who best represented the essence of their respective piece. Power went to Ganondorf himself, wisdom went to Zelda, and courage found its resting place in Link. And while Ganondorf was empowered from the Triforce of Power resting within him, he didn't have the full relic, meaning his ultimate goal of his unlimited wish was yet to be granted. Because of this, Ganondorf spent those 7 years searching for the remaining pieces. Long story short though, eventually the hero of time, armed with the Triforce of Courage and Hylia's Master Sword, defeats Ganondorf atop his floating castle, freeing Zelda from her imprisonment. However, before Ganondorf breathes his last, he calls upon the Triforce of Power to transform into a monstrous demon known as Ganon. Together, Link and Zelda alongside the new sages are able to not only defeat Ganon, but also seal him away inside the evil realm, after which Zelda vows to give Link back his stolen childhood and uses the power of the Ocarina of Time to send Link back in time. Another action which would echo throughout eternity, because at this point, the timeline splits into adult, child, and fallen. But that doesn't really matter for Tears of the Kingdom. Why, you ask? Well, because Breath of the Wild infamously has ties to all 3 of these timelines that followed the split at the end of Ocarina of Time. And we're not gonna go into a timeline theory in this video. You'll have to check out my several other timeline theory videos for that. According to various sources of in-game lore and lore found in the literature Creating a Champion though, the 2 games that Breath of the Wild definitively has ties to would be Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time, which is why I took the time to explain the events of both of those games and only those games here. The important point to remember is that Ganon was created when Ganondorf, a reincarnation of Demise's hatred, obtained the Triforce of Power, and he has been sealed away and revived and sealed again over and over again, and each time defeated by the Princess of Hyrule and the chosen hero as time has marched on. The last time this happened was 10,000 years before the events of Breath of the Wild. By this time, the Hylians, aided by the descendants of the original Impa, the devoted Sheikah clan, were privy to the history of the royal family and therefore Ganon's eventual return. Because of this, the Sheikah used their highly advanced technologies to create war machines that would aid the princess and her chosen hero in their inevitable fight against Ganon, which they did. However, after Ganon was successfully sealed away once more 10,000 years ago, the king of Hyrule at the time began to fear the Sheikah's powerful machines, which led him to actually outlaw their technology and command it all to be buried beneath the ground. This led to a split in the Sheikah clan between those that decided to remain loyal to the royal family following this betrayal of trust, and those that turned against them. The defectors called themselves the Yiga clan and are still active, working to bring about the resurrection of Ganon to this day. For 10,000 years, Hyrule knew a period of peace, and even forgot about the ancient Sheikah machines and Ganon's eventual return, until one day 100 years ago, when an unknown fortune teller warned the king about the return of Ganon, now known as Calamity Ganon. This fortune teller also revealed that the answer to defeating Calamity Ganon lay deep beneath the surface of the earth. Following up on this advice, the king decided to begin excavating large areas of land in search of this answer. Before too long, the very same machines that the king of 10,000 years ago ordered to be buried were unearthed. The current king also began studying the legend of Calamity Ganon's return and discovered another missing piece, the power of Hyrule's princess, who in this case was his daughter, Zelda, the current incarnation of goddess Hylia. Unfortunately though, Zelda's mother, who was also a descendant of Hylia and therefore had knowledge of how to unlock the sealing powers of Zelda's bloodline, passed away when Zelda was only 6 years old. And 1 year later, when Zelda was still only 7, her father commanded her to begin attempting to awaken her powers, which nobody alive could assist her with. Meanwhile, the child of one of the knights of Hyrule, a boy named Link, randomly enters the Korok Forest, formerly known as the Kokiri Forest, and extracts the Master Sword from within, proving his worthiness even as a child and gaining him immense amounts of respect and fame among all the knights of Hyrule, reaching even to the king himself. However, as Link's combat prowess and ability to fulfill his destiny as the Master Sword's chosen hero grew with each passing year, Zelda's story was quite the opposite. No matter what she did, or where she prayed, her powers would not awaken. Several years later, in an attempt to still be useful to her beloved land of Hyrule, she partnered with the royal advisor Impa and the Sheikah researchers Pura and Rabi in order to help head up the ancient war machine effort, leading to this Princess Zelda becoming something of a scientist herself. Together, they partially restore an ancient tool known as the Sheikah Slate and fully restore the 4 giant war machines known as the Divine Beasts. Zelda continues to aid the cause by taking over handling the Divine Beasts and sets out to appoint 4 champions to pilot them. She ends up appointing 1 member from each of the 4 major races sharing the land of Hyrule: Rivali, champion of the Rito; Mipha, princess of the Zora; Daruk, chief of the Gorons; and Urbosa, queen of the Gerudo and close friend to the late queen of Hyrule. The Gerudo, by the way, have since sworn off the admission of any men into their town, including the rare Gerudo men, due to the legend of King Ganondorf, who long ago became the embodiment of evil and source of great shame for the Gerudo, who have been ruled by queens ever since. Eventually, Zelda begins to research the mysterious shrines located all over Hyrule and how to enter them, while Link is appointed her personal protector knight and head champion, much to her annoyance at first, although eventually she grew to admire Link and even develop some feelings for him. Meanwhile, monsters had begun to appear in far greater and more severe quantities all across the land, ominously signifying Ganon's building power and soon return. Because of this, her worried father's persistence on her learning how to harness the sleeping power within her bloodline only worsened, leading to him straight up forbidding her to continue her research until she learned to master her powers. And on her 17th birthday, exactly 100 years before the events of the game, she prayed one last time for her powers to awaken at the Shrine of Wisdom atop Mount Lanayru, but to no avail. As she descended from atop the mountain, she met with the other champions who tried to offer some consolation for her grief. Their conversation was cut short though, because that was the very moment that Calamity Ganon appeared. And this is when perhaps the darkest moment in all of Zelda history took place, because Calamity Ganon had learned from its previous defeat 10,000 years ago. It knew all about the powerful Sheikah automations that were awaiting its return, and therefore, its first move was to capture each and every one of them, including the 4 Divine Beasts, slaughtering each champion and replacing them with the Blight Ganons as pilots and turning the automations against the people of Hyrule. Calamity Ganon and the Sheikah forces then swept over the land, killing everyone in their sight, including the king himself. At this point, Link, who fought valiantly to defend his princess, was about to meet his end at the hands of a guardian stalker. Just before it happened though, Zelda stepped in between Link and the machine and unleashed a burst of power that vanquished the power of Calamity Ganon in her immediate vicinity. She then wept over Link's fatal state, but just as her hope faded, a familiar voice inside the Master Sword spoke to her, telling her that Link can still be saved. Zelda then commanded a few of the remaining Sheikah soldiers to take Link to the Shrine of Resurrection for his wounds to be healed, after which she placed the Master Sword in the care of the Great Deku Tree and headed to the castle to battle Calamity Ganon alone. She was able to hold the beast within the castle for 100 years until Link woke up in the present day, although his memories had unfortunately disappeared. Aided by the ghost of Zelda's father and the still living Impa, Pura, and Rabi, Link is able to slowly but surely regain his power and his memories and defeat each Blight Ganon and restore the Divine Beasts to the control of the champions, whose spirits still remained within the machines. He's also able to enter the Korok Forest and retrieve the Blade of Evil's Bane once again, and together with the champions, defeat Calamity Ganon and free Zelda from within its essence. lands. And finally, the princess is able to seal the beast away, protecting the land of Hyrule from evil once again. As the game ends, the ghosts of the king and 4 champions are finally able to move on, and the princess, along with her knight, set off to restore their kingdom. And that brings us up to the current state of what we can see in the Tears of the Kingdom trailers, which we can still gather very little information about. I mean, of course, we can tell some things, such as we're going to the sky, Ganondorf is returning and is where the mysterious malice substance comes from, Zelda's falling and the Master Sword is breaking, but that's about it. Everything else is still very mysterious, but that just adds to the impact that this game's story will no doubt have on the franchise. If you're excited for Tears of the Kingdom to come out this May, then hit that like button knowing you're all prepped and ready to experience the story of the newest Zelda game. And if you're planning on picking it up, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to be covering this game quite a bit right here on the channel, so I'd love to see you stick around. You can always unsubscribe later if you change your mind. Also, before you go down in the comments claiming there was a bunch I missed in the Zelda timeline or that I didn't cover the events of Age of Calamity's alternate timeline, the reason I omitted the vast majority of the Zelda games from this video is because they're not expressly important to the story of Tears of the Kingdom, and rather just serve as references in the world of Breath of the Wild. I hope that clears up any confusion. Huge thanks as always to my bandit crew, who are the reason I keep going with the channel and help so much with the continuation of content. That's all I've got for this one, so be sure to follow me on my socials, and I look forward to seeing you next time. This is Bandit, signing out. Peace!